This is Qtv News. I am Mariam Asani and thanks for joining us. Now the main local, international and sports news headlines. Ahead of Monday's celebration of the World Teachers' Day, the Minister for Basic and Secondary Education has paid tribute to teachers in the Gambia, while the Gambian Teachers Union called on government for more support. The Minister of Information and Communication Infrastructure on Friday held the 9th weekly Inter-ministerial press conference to update the media on the various ministries and issues affecting the country. A 4-story building in Lamin collapsed on Saturday morning, leaving the owner in a dilemma and neighbors worried. In international news, President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania have tested positive for coronavirus, and the president is now in hospital receiving treatment. And in sports, former Gambian international and Tottenham Academy coach Cherno Samba has taken a break from coaching to become a player agent. Ahead of Monday's celebration of World Teachers' Day, the Minister for Basic and Secondary Education has paid tribute to teachers in the Gambia. Earlier on Saturday, the Gambia Teachers Union also held a press conference in observance of Monday's World Teachers' Day celebrations. And Sumana Esonyasa reports.
Commemorated annually since October 5, 1994, World Teachers' Day celebrates the teaching profession and gives an opportunity to take stock of the achievements and contribution teachers make to sustainable development worldwide. The theme for this year's celebration is Teachers Leading in Crisis, Reimagining the Future. In observance of Monday's celebration, the Gambia's Minister for Basic and Secondary Education, Claudiana Cole, says it is highly important that teachers are provided with more support, and went on to thank teachers in the country for their invaluable contribution to national development.
There is need to raise the status of teachers and to improve their conditions of service and working environment. The theme of our celebration, Leading in Crisis, Reimagining the Future, is corroborated in the Gambia by the swift response our teachers took by engaging and innovating strategies and methods that ensured continuity of teaching and learning to a large scale during the very first few days of the closure of schools in March 2020.
At a press conference organized by the Gambia Teachers Union at the GTU-CCU premises in observance of Monday's World Teachers' Day celebration, Marie-Antoinette Kaur, Secretary General of the Gambia Teachers Union, called on government to invest more in the education sector and provide teachers with the requisite resources to make their work easy, especially in light of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Government should not let teachers and students pay for the cost of the crisis. They must ensure that our education systems, from current financial pressures and budgetary constraints, are maintained. Let us recognize that investing in teachers is a wise investment.
Esa Sow, Deputy Secretary General, Gambia Teachers Union, also called on government to prioritize education in its support mechanism during the crisis, adding the central government's lack of serious commitment to provide funding is delaying the reopening of schools.
But what is disturbing at this material moment is the fact that there are no signs, no indicators, so to speak, of government's seriousness to commit funds to make sure that when schools are declared open, they could be done as required.
Other speakers included Musa Sow, GTU Vice President, and Babukar Ojuf, Director General of the Gambia Teachers Union, Cooperative Credit Union. As opposed to previous years, this year's World Teachers' Day is expected to be celebrated virtually due to COVID-19. Ansumane Sonyasi for Qtv News.
The Minister of Information and Communication Infrastructure on Friday held the 9th Inter-weekly Ministerial Press Conference to update the media on the work of various ministries and issues affecting the country.
At the weekly press briefing held virtually, the Minister for Information and Communication Infrastructure, Ibrahim Silla, informed journalists that the Gambia government, through the Ministry of Tourism and Culture, will support businesses and stakeholders in the tourism sector with $100 million COVID-19 support. The package is to help improve the resilience, effectiveness and efficiency of those involved in the tourism sector as the country prepares for the reopening of the 2020-2021 tourism season. On the issue of land-related disputes in the country, Minister Silla said the Ministry of Lands, Regional Government and Religious Affairs is currently working on the development of a mapping system for the country, which, when finalized, is expected to minimize land and natural resource conflicts.
The short-term measure allows each parcel of land to be geo-referenced using its coordinates as a unique identifier of a precise geographic location of a land within a particular area. This upgrade will effectively help the ministry mitigate incidents of leasing one parcel of customary land.
Minister Silla also said the Ministry of Youth and Sports has introduced a youth revolving loan scheme under the Youth and Sport Development Tax. The scheme has a start-up fund of $22 million, which shall be periodically refilled.
A memorandum of understanding has been signed on the implementation of the Youth Revolving Fund scheme between the Ministry of Youth and Sports through the National Enterprises Development Initiative NEDI and the Social Development Fund SDF.
We were informed that the Ministry of Petroleum and Energy recently validated the Gambia Green Mini-Grips feasibility studies, which is part of the Gambia GMG Country Support Program funded by the Sustainable Development Fund for Africa of the African Development Bank. He adds that the availability of reliable, efficient, affordable, and environmentally friendly electricity supply is one of the cornerstones of the Gambia government. The minister also reveals that the Ministry of Trade, through the Enhanced Integration Framework Sustainability Support Phase project, has been supporting the Department of Fisheries in the construction of a smokehouse for women fish processors at the Tanje Community Fishing Center. The Information Minister also said the PMO has completed the disbursement of batch 14 of the Civil Servant Revolving Loan Scheme. He said the money was disbursed to all the three categories of loan beneficiaries, namely personal, car, and house loans to eligible civil servants in the first half of 2020 fiscal year.
107 people benefited from personal loans, 18 people benefited from car loans, and 14 people benefited from housing loans. The fundamental objectives of the Civil Service Revolving Fund scheme is geared towards attracting, retaining, and motivating a highly professional workforce for effective and efficient service delivery. This scheme is playing an important role in the attraction and retention of key public servant personnel in the Gambia.
On youth entrepreneurship, the minister said the National Enterprise Development Initiative NEDI is mandated to identify, select and provide coaching and mentoring services and microfinance provision to the youth of the Gambia. He added that officials of NEDI had recently visited Bureng and Jataba in the Jara East and Kiang West to facilitate the operations of the micro-agro processing centers in the two communities for the region's youth and women entrepreneurs. Reporting for QTV News, I am Omar P. Jallo.
We will go for a short commercial break, and when we come back, the news continues with some more local news stories. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. A four-story building in Lamin has collapsed, leaving the owner in a dilemma and having to think of starting all over again. Neighbors say there were no casualties when the building fell around 5 a.m. this morning. Babu Karsi reports.
This collapse comes less than a month after a building in Banjul reportedly crashed, leaving some with injuries. In addition to which, we also receive unconfirmed reports of other building collapses. Fortunately for this building collapse in Lamin, there were no casualties, but it caused damage to the nearby compound. According to the neighbors, the building was under construction and had reached its fourth floor. They say the compound is owned by a European who, according to them, was intending to build a motel in the area. Babukar Ture, whose perimeter wall was bundled down by the fallen building and part of his house cracked, said his neighbor never contacted them or inform them of anything with regards to building a multi-story building. According to him, the construction of the building has caused some damage to his compound, ranging from his TV channel disc, wet cement falling on his roof and backyard, but says the owner never cared.
With all that, am not lunch don joy why amuñ ci pexe ndax daf ñu sës benn borom bi mooy samp it waxul ñu dara ñaar ok jamono biñ koy samp sax am na suñu bagage yoo xam ne fii ñoom léeg-léeg mu daanu yàq ko waaye yooyu yëpp du doon problème waaye bii moom xanaa sant nañ ci yàlla de comme kenn deewut.
There were things that we wanted done when this building was being erected, but it never materialized. One is the closeness of the building to my rooms. When the owner was building it, he never contacted us as close neighbors, and worst of all, when the contractors were building, objects would fall into my house and cause damages, but nothing came out of it. We thank God that no one was in the building, and also when it fell, it didn't hurt anyone. I thank God for that, but I am of the belief that the authorities should be contacted to do a proper survey anytime an individual plans to erect such type of structures in the country. Rohi Cham, another neighbor, said she thanked God that there were no victims, but was scared to death, and explains how she came to realize what had happened.
The incident happened early morning around 5 a.m. when we heard a light noise and we came out only to see the building collapse. We are just lucky that it happened in the early hours of the morning because normally we do everything in the backyard and always use the tap. Even last night, I was here around 10 p.m. to fetch water. We thank God there are no casualties and all that is affected is part of our house and defense.
Some of the neighbors we spoke to off camera said the owner of the building never consulted them on building a multi-story building, and all they heard people saying is that he was intending to build a motel before this unfortunate incident happened last night. It is becoming an uncomfortable fact in the Gambia that buildings and structures are not always constructed in line with basic architectural, civil engineering or building regulation norms in many parts of the country, including in Banjul, the capital. This and the Banjul incident should serve as an eye-opener to authorities in charge of vetting such structures that unfortunately can endanger lives, many of which fail when put to test by heavy rains and winds during rainy seasons. Babu Karsi, Qtv News.
Following the government's easing of some of the public health emergency restrictions, especially on market opening and closing times and ending the night curfew, we went to find out how businesses are operating amidst the pandemic. More in this report.
After the relaxation of restrictions, allowing markets to open from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., people are going back to their usual daily lives and businesses amidst the COVID-19. One of the most affected places were the marketplaces, when opening hours were restricted to 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. for essential shops and 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. for non-essential shops. The declaration sparked complaints from vendors and customers, saying the times allocated were not favorable. At the Serekunda market, Amadou Tijan Sal, a shopkeeper, says it was a difficult time for shopkeepers to sustain themselves. He adds that now things are going better compared to previous weeks. However, he said business is not as usual.
Wa sante yalla ñu ngi ñew waye déméwul ni mu démé dé ndax xamna li fi ñew la lolo tax waye nak am nañ yaakar so xeyé rek ñew.
We thank God. Business is really going slow, but we hope things will go fine because it's not easy for a family man to stay at home. We would rather come to our shops and not sell and stay at home. The number of coronavirus cases is going down, but people should not relax about it. Let us still follow the WHO guidelines.
Adebimpe Ebony, a fabric seller, also states that it was a difficult time, but thank God things are going back to the way they were. She further advises people to adhere to the WHO guidelines.
I can say it's better than the state of emergency. In a state of emergency, nobody wants to come out. You can come here for a day, you will not sell anything. But now, at least, we are managing. Half bed is better than none. They said earth is wet. If you believe in yourself and you know that this pandemic is real, I believe you have to use your mask. because especially market is normally congested. It's not like any other places. You understand? So I believe that anybody that is coming to market, you have to use your hand sanitizer and your face mask.
Sajo Jaju, a vegetable seller, says the different opening hours for businesses and the closure of the markets on Sunday favors her. However, she admits that it was very difficult for others. Sajo goes on to say that it is a difficult time because business is quite slow. Changing the time to 6 p.m. is good, but I don't stay until 6 p.m. For me, closing the markets on Sundays favors me, but it may not favor others. Business is difficult. Before, I used to sell 2 baskets of tomatoes, which finishes before 2 p.m. But now, to sell 1 basket is a problem. Going around the market, we observe that many people are not wearing face masks. The market is one of the most congested places, and the probability of people transmitting the disease are high. As the number of cases decrease, the WHO country rep has warned Gambians not to relax the preventive guidelines. Ajibintu Drame, QTV News.
We will take another short break and we continue with international and sports news when we return. Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, this is QTV News. In international news, U.S. President Donald Trump and the First Lady Melania have tested positive for coronavirus a few days after a senior aide to the president was found to have the virus. The president is now in hospital and the First Lady remains at the White House. The diagnosis has thrown Trump's election campaign into turmoil a month before the U.S. votes. More in this report.
Just before his own positive diagnosis, Trump aide Hope Hicks tested for the virus after traveling to and from Tuesday debate to Cleveland, as well as being on a round-trip flight to Trump's Wednesday rally in Minnesota. President Trump and his wife Melania say they are in quarantine. Ironically, President Trump has shown disdain and not been much of a fan regarding compliance with WHO standard guidelines for curbing the deadly disease. At the first head-to-head presidential debate, he also made fun of his rival, Democratic nominee Joe Biden, for frequently wearing a mask. At the age of 74 and overweight, President Trump falls into the highest risk category for serious complication from the disease, which has killed more than 200,000 Americans and more than 1 million people globally. On Twitter, the couple's preferred means of communicating, the First Lady wrote that she and her husband were feeling good. On the day following confirmation of his positive status, President Trump was taken to the Walter Reed National Military Medicare for observation and treatment. World leaders have been wishing the president a swift recovery, including Boris Johnson, who once contracted the virus, was hospitalized in April and spent 3 days on a ventilator. He said he has hope that Trump will be recovered fully from the deadly virus. He's a naturally obviously very resilient character, and I'm sure he will come through it very well, he told UK media. Chinese President Xi Jinping has also sent a message to Trump and the First Lady after the announcement was made. My wife Peng Liyuan and I express our sympathies to you and your wife and wish you a fast recovery, he said in a message on state TV. However, not everyone was sending well-wishing messages. On Friday, Hu Xinjing, the outspoken editor of the Communist Party's tabloid Global Times, wrote on his Twitter, President Trump and the First Lady have paid the price for his gamble to downplay the COVID-19. The news shows the severity of the U.S. pandemic situation. It will impose a negative impact on the image of Trump and the U.S. and may also negatively affect his re-election. The news of the president's condition raises questions over what effect, if any, this will have on next month's presidential elections, as the president is now forced to withdraw, at least for now, from the campaign. As neither man wore a mask during the last debate, His Democratic challenger is relieved to have since test negative and not pick up the infection from the president. Ajibintu Drame, QTV News.
And over now in sports, former Gambian international and Tottenham Academy coach Cherno Samba has taken a break from coaching to become a player agent. Samba said he is motivated by his interaction with players to help them realize their dreams. Our sports reporter Modu Gajaga has more.
Until his last 2 successful player transfers, Samba was an academy team coach at Tottenham. Now the UEFA A license holder wants to focus on his trade as a player's agent. Samba has represented Tanzanian striker Mwana Samata, who moved from Premier League side Aston Villa to Turkish side Fenerbahce SK last week. Another player he represented is Ghanaian teenage attacker Jibril Fanji Toure, who signed a 5-year deal with Watford.
Coaches, sporting directors and players themselves were always constant in contact with me to speak to them regarding my story and just trying to guide them. So doing that constantly with the coaching side of it as well, I think it was where to a point where, you know what, it just makes sense for me to be a player representative.
Player agents get a 10% share of every transfer of the player they represent. Coaching at the highest level is a lucrative job, although Samba has only coached at youth level for now. But has he been tempted by the financial rewards that come with being a player's agent?
No, I wouldn't say that because as a lot of people know anyway, financially I'm very stable. So that was not the motivation. The motivation was to deal with players in terms of, in this way, as a coach, you've only got a certain limitation to work with them. And that's mostly in the field, in around the training ground and so forth. Whereas as a player representative, then you can go beyond and deeper.
Born in the Gambia but raised in London, he was snapped up by Millwall after scoring 132 goals in 32 games for his school team, St. Joseph's Academy, in Blackheath, South East London. At 14, he was keeping Wayne Rooney out of the England under-16 team, and the likes of Liverpool and Manchester United were taking a serious interest on him. Once a prospect for the biggest clubs in England, but also on the brink of committing suicide due to depression.
I think that when I was playing, I didn't have that at the time, sometimes. So I looked upon myself and said, right, for me now to help the next generation, this is the only way that will fit it well to achieve what I wanted to achieve. The goal is still there, which is to help this generation of talent to make sure that they accomplish what they want to accomplish and do their best to get to the highest level of football.
Cherno Samba's story of rejuvenation can inspire a generation of players. He has put a difficult past behind him. In 2018, Cherno wrote his autobiography, Still in the Game, a tale of his life story as a footballer. Mamudu Gajaga, QTV News.
Before we end this bulletin, let's take a quick look at our main stories. Ahead of Monday's celebration of World Teachers' Day, the Minister for Basic and Senior Secondary Education has paid tribute to teachers in the Gambia, while the Gambia Teachers Union called on government for more support. The Minister of Information and Communication Infrastructure on Friday held the 9th weekly Inter-ministerial press conference to update the media on the various ministries and issues affecting the country. A 4-story building in Lamin has collapsed on Saturday morning, leaving the owner in a dilemma and neighbors worried. In international news, U.S. President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania has tested positive for coronavirus, and the president is now in hospital receiving treatment. And in sports, former Gambian international and Tottenham Academy coach Cherno Samba has taken a break from coaching to become a player agent. That's all we have for you in this edition of the QTV News. Do join us tomorrow for the weekend review. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.